Hey, Erev Tov, everyone. What? You have to tell me who the chazan is and how to prepare. Yes. So, Erev Yom Kippur. So we're coming up to this time tomorrow night. It's hard to believe, but this time tomorrow night will be Yom Kippur. And the main mitzvah of the day of Yom Kippur, aside from the fast, obviously, but there's the mitzvah of tshuva, or the mitzvah of vidui specifically, right? We say the vidui 10 times. We start already at Mincha, so the vidui, and then throughout the 5 tefillot of Yom Kippur, each time we say the vidui in the silent Amidah. We say it again during the Chazarat Hashatz, or in Maariv when there's no Chazarat Hashatz, we say it again. And it's interesting because if you look at the Rambam, the way the Rambam formulates this, first of all, there's a lot, we won't go into great detail about it now, but there's great discussion in the Rambam. Is there a mitzvah of tshuva, or is there a mitzvah of vidui? He seems to contradict himself in the way that he writes it. A famous formulation in the first halakha of Hilchot Tshuva. So the Rambam writes, Kol ha-mitzvot shebatorah, ben aseh, ben lo taseh, for whatever mitzvah in the Torah you may have transgressed, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, im avar adam al achat mehen, ben bizadon, ben bishkaga, you did it b'mezid, b'shogeg, whatever. So then he says, we'd expect him to say, chayav lachzor b'tshuva, or chayav la'asot b'tshuva. Of course, he doesn't say that. He says, kshe yaseh tshuva, v'yashuv mecheto, chayav lehitvadot. When a person does tshuva, and yashuv, and returns from his chet, interesting as well. What is the double language? If it's the same thing, he wouldn't have said it twice, right? But he says, when you do tshuva, chayav lehitvadot. Then you have a mitzvah of vidui, and he goes in and he explains exactly how we do vidui and what the obligation is. So there are those who say, the Minchas Chinuch, for example, says, because the Rambam writes, kshe yaseh tshuva, there is actually no mitzvah of tshuva. There's a mitzvah of vidui. If you do tshuva, you do it properly. You do the mitzvah, and there's a lot of discussion in that. I'll just mention Rav Soloveitchik, a very interesting approach to this, and he said essentially, yes, there's a mitzvah of tshuva. Tshuva and vidui are 2 different elements of the same mitzvah. The way that he puts it is, you have the maaseh mitzvah, which is the act of the mitzvah, which you are commanded to do, and then there's the kiyum mitzvah, the fulfillment of the mitzvah. When can I say fulfilled it? Now, most mitzvot, the maaseh and the kiyum are going to be the same. Let's take tefillin as an example. What is the maaseh mitzvah of tefillin? It's putting on tefillin. What is the kiyum mitzvah of tefillin? Putting on tefillin. Okay, but there are certain mitzvot, particularly mitzvot which are related to emotions, where these 2 things are separate. And for example, famous example is there's the mitzvah of pru urvu, right? The mitzvah of having children. So when is one fulfilled the mitzvah of pru urvu? When one has children. But when one is engaged in the mitzvah, when is engaged, you've performed the mitzvah, but you've not fulfilled the mitzvah until you have fulfilled the result. So Rav Soloveitchik said regarding tshuva, what's the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tshuva? The fulfillment of the mitzvah of tshuva is when I have done tshuva, when I have become a Baal tshuva, with all that entails. It means I'm not sinning anymore, and I feel bad about how I sinned, and I'm not going to do it again, and I've changed, I've become a different person. How can you be commanded to do that? It's a very, very difficult thing. How do you get there? What do you do? So the maaseh, the action about which you can be commanded, is vidui. You can command a person to do vidui. Say A, B, C, right? Say these words, say whatever it is. And the idea is that those words, by saying the vidui, that will lead us to fulfilling the mitzvah of tshuva. Okay, that is one approach. And that also tells us that it's not just mechanics here. We're not just going by roads. We're not just saying the words. The person needs to understand what they're saying. The person needs to think about what they're saying. The person needs to, that vidui that we say 10 times, to bring us to make a change. But there's something that's very, very strange, very contradictory here in the Rambam, and strange in what we do at all. Because the Rambam tells us the formulation of vidui. He says, right, he says, Ketzat mitvadeh. So how does a person confess? How does one say vidui? What do you have to say? So, Omer, Ana Hashem, Chatati, Aviti, Pashati lefanecha. Right, different words, different expressions, maybe different levels of sin. But a person says essentially, Hashem, I've sinned before you. Vasiti kach v'kach, and I've done such and such. Right, we go through Aleph Bet, we go through everything. V'harei nichamti uboshti b'maasai, and I am embarrassed and I am ashamed of that which I have done. ולעולם איני חוזר לדבר הזה. And I will never return, I won't do it again. Right? These are the three. We read this and we think of this as the different steps, the different stages of tshuva. There is the confession, there is what's called azivat hachet, right, not doing it again. There's kabbalah la'atid, there's taking on for the future, there is embarrassment, regret, right, all of these. But the Rambam here doesn't list these as stages of tshuva. He lists all of this as part of the vidui. This is the formulation. This is what I have to say. I don't just say, I've done X, Y, Z, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, etc. I say, I've done Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, right? Chatati, aviti, peshati lefanecha, asiti kach v'kach. That's one part. Now there's another part. Harei nichamti uboshti b'maasai. And I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed of what I've done. Uleolam eini chozer ledavar zeh. And I'm not going back to do it again. He says, Zeu ikarot shel vidui. This is the main part of vidui. V'kol ha'ma'aber itvadot u'ma'arich b'inyan zeh ha'izeh meshabach. Okay, that's the minimum. You want to go on, you want to lengthen it, you want to add things in, that's fine. That is praiseworthy. But what's the problem? Problem is we're going to come to Yom Kippur, we're going to say vidui 10 times or 11 times, and you look in the machzor, you look at the vidui that's printed, half of it's missing. This is not the formulation of what we say. Nichamti uboshti b'maasai. Okay, so there's a certain paragraph where we say the words, maybe we hint to it. We definitely don't say, I'm not going back to it. It's only part of the video. That's the problem in the machzor. But the Rambam himself says it. This is Perek Aleph. You go into Perek Bet, and you see the Rambam gives us the formulation of vidui again in Halacha Chet. So now he's talking about Yom Kippur. Perek Aleph, he's talking about tshuva in general. In Perek Bet, he goes into more detail about Aseret Yemei Tshuva. First, he says, we quoted this on Shabbos, talks about how Afal Pisha Tshuva ve'atzaka yafeh le'olam, right? Tshuva and prayer and crying out is effective, it's nice, it's good all the time. But in these 10 days, including Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, it's the most effective. And immediately it's accepted. Okay. And then he says, Yom Kippurim uzman tshuva lakol. Yom Kippur is a specific day of tshuva for everybody, liachid, v'larabim, for individuals, for the collective. Uketz mechila u'shlicha l'Yisrael. This is the pinnacle, right, of forgiveness for all of Israel. And therefore, everybody is required, everybody is obligated to do tshuva and perform vidui on Yom Kippur. Now, we already know, this is Perek Bet, we already know how to perform tshuva and how to say vidui because we learned that in Perek Aleph, right? So what do you expect? He's going to tell me how do we say, now he tells vidui, we have to start before, we have to start on Erev Yom Kippur, in case chas v'chalila something happens to you at the meal, right? You do it before the Sudam Hafseket, and you go back, and you chozeru mitvadeh b'layla, v'chozeru mitvadeh b'shachlit, u'musaf, mincha, v'ni'ila, you go back, you do the vidui again and again and again. V'ichan mitvadeh, and he explains which part of the Amidah we do our vidui. Okay, so what is vidui? So you don't need to tell me what vidui is, because I already saw in Perek Aleph, you told me what it was. You said, asiti kach v'kach, boshti v'nechlamti, e'lo meni chozer. But then he says that vidui shenagu bo kol Yisrael. What is the vidui that we say? Aval chatanu, we have sinned. V'hu ikal vidui, and that's the main part of the vidui. That's it. So then he goes on and to tell me as well, avelot shitvada alein b'yom kippurim zeh chozer u'mitvada alein b'yom kippurim acher. So machloket in the Gemara, the Rambam paskins here that if you've said vidui on a certain sin or a certain thing that you've done in previous years, you can go back and you can say vidui on it again this Yom Kippur. Okay, so the question is, what happened to the whole formulation of vidui? You know, there's one time a year when we really fulfill this mitzvah of vidui lemehadra. Right? It's a little known fact that a person's allowed to do tshuva also not in the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Right? That's what we're talking about. A person did something wrong. I know I've done something wrong. I feel ashamed. I want to change. I want to do vidui. I can say vidui whenever throughout the year. You've given me the whole formulation. But there's one time a year that there's an obligation. And there's a chiyuv on everybody. And this is ketz mechila u'shlicha. And this is the day of tshuva. And this is the day of vidui. We do it 10 times. So the whole explanation that you've given me of what the vidui is, and now I have the formulation in the machzor and half of it's missing. So why is the vidui of Yom Kippur so different from the vidui through the rest of the year? And where's it gone? So I saw Rav Soloveitchik in Harei Kedem, he gives two answers to this. And there's a pretty big nafkamina between them, actually. But the two answers that he suggests are the following. He says that the tshuva, when the Rambam here talks about Yom Kippurim uzman tshuva lakol, liachid v'larabim, uketz mechila u'slicha l'Yisrael, he says there is a separate obligation of tshuva on Yom Kippur, which is separate and distinct from the obligation of tshuva that is the rest of the year. And that is, and he says that at the time of Yom Kippur, which is the time of kapara, and this is the time of tshuva, there I have an obligation to do vidui. He compares it, he brings an example when a person brings a korban, there's a certain element of vidui as well, and it's similar to that. But essentially what he's saying is, this vidui is different to the vidui that you have the rest of the year. So a person has to do the vidui, person's whatever we've done wrong, we have to do the tshuva, we have to go through the whole process, we have to say the whole vidui. And even though, remember the Rambam said, if you've mentioned something on a previous Yom Kippur, you can come back and mention it again. Because this is not just the standard tshuva of saying that I've done wrong. This is something else. This is something intrinsic to Yom Kippur. So the assumption is that you've already said the vidui. You've already gone through all the stages and you've said the whole thing, etc. And then I can say the vidui that's of Yom Kippur, that's an additional level, that's something else. So what comes out of this, and that's quite a chumrah. Because that means if I've not said the full video, so then I should add it in, or I should say it. I didn't say it before Yom Kippur. I can say it on Yom Kippur as well. But that's what Rav Soloveitchik says. Approach number one. He says it might be, and the Rambam is referring to a case of somebody who's already done the tshuva, and he's already said the video, but there's an additional step with the ikara video of Yom Kippur is to say aval chatan. So that's one answer he gives. He gives a second answer again, which comes from a very different direction, and it's the following. We have a machloket in the Mishnah about whether a person is required to do tshuva on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is such a powerful day, and it has such a, as the Rambam said, that there's an opinion that even if a person did not do tshuva, that Yom Kippur would still come and atone. Right? Even if I did nothing, still Yom Kippur has that cleansing effect. Now we don't paskin that way. Right? We say that a person's required to come along and to do tshuva as well. But the point is that it's not Yom Kippur still has power. Yom Kippur still has an effect, meaning you need to be part of it. You need to be in the parasha. So you need to do tshuva. But if you do tshuva, then Yom Kippur will come and take that effect and we'll do the rest. So he says, ordinarily, a person is required to do the whole vidui and to say the whole, and all the different stages, etc. But when it comes to Yom Kippur, because of what Yom Kippur can do, this is almost opposite to the first answer we gave, right? But when it comes to with what Yom Kippur can do, you just say this ikar vidui, and that's enough. And with that is enough that Yom Kippur will come along and we'll do the rest and we'll complete it. And he says, we see this, right? He said, essentially, a person is not required to go through and to do all the stages and to do everything. What is the person required to do? Nonetheless, the person is required to stop doing the chet, whatever it was. Without that, the tshuva can't be accepted. You can't, right? Yom Kippur can't do anything. And the Rambam writes this when he says, earlier on, he says in Halacha Gimel, Perek Sheni, he says, Kol hamitvadeh bidvarim v'lo gamar b'libo la'azov. If a person says vidui, but I've not decided in my heart, I've not resolved that I'm not going to repeat whatever it was that I did wrong, so harei zeh tovel dedomeh letovel v'sheretz biyado. It's like somebody goes to the mikveh and he's holding something that's still going to make him tameh, right? You can't do that. You have to. That is the foremost. That is the primary condition. So he says. Remember in the first halacha, we said there was a bit of the Rambam said something which sounded superfluous. He said ksheyaseh tshuva v'yashuv mecheto chayav litvado. I said, what's the difference between ksheyaseh tshuva and yashuv mecheto? So he answers, now we can understand. Ksheyaseh tshuva refers to the entire process, l'asivat hachet and the vidui and kach v'kach and nichamti, right? There's all of that. The yashuv mecheto means I've stopped doing the chet. I haven't necessarily gone through the whole process. I haven't necessarily done the whole vidui. So according to this, he explains in Harei Kedem that when I come to Yom Kippur, it's enough. It's such a power. Yashuv mecheto. That is the basic, that's the primary, that's the condition. The T'nai Saf, they would say, right? Without that, you can't begin. But you do that, and then you say the vidui that we have of Yom Kippur, that is enough without necessarily even going through all the rest, and that should take care of everything. Bottom line comes out of all of this is that we should be concentrating and we should be thinking and we should be trying coming into Yom Kippur, not just about the fast and not just thinking about how hungry you are or how much to eat or have the shiurim or whatever it is, but also the vidui and the words, and it should be something which is not just, as I say, not just routine, but something that really gets into our hearts and gets us to make a change. And the siyata d'shmaya, the help from the day of Yom Kippur, the Siyata Deshmaya is there as well. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Amar, Sakadosh Baruch Hu Zakot Yisrael, Yachib Aleim Torah Mitzvot Shnei Adonai Chavetz Zman Tzidko, Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.